But this hearing carried special weight. Just days earlier, Greene had posted a video questioning whether immigrants like Gonzalez were real Americans, suggesting that those who hadn't been born here couldn't truly understand American values. The post had gone viral for all the wrong reasons, drawing condemnation from immigrant rights groups and praise from anti-immigration hardliners. Ocasio-Cortez, whose own family had roots in Puerto Rico, had responded with a thread about the contributions of immigrant communities, garnering millions of likes and shares. The stakes couldn't be higher. The proposed funding cuts wouldn't just affect statistics. They would determine whether families fleeing violence would find safety or be turned away, whether children separated from their parents would have access to legal representation, whether America would honor its historic promise to those seeking refuge or slam the door shut. As Gonzalez began her testimony, describing families sleeping on concrete floors and children crying for parents they might never see again, the human cost of political gamesmanship became viscerally real. Her voice cracked as she recounted a 7-year-old girl who hadn't spoken since being separated from her mother. The gallery sat in rapt silence, some wiping away tears. It was into this emotionally charged atmosphere that Greene chose to launch her attack. Sources later revealed she'd come prepared with talking points from far-right blogs, ready to challenge not just Gonzalez's testimony, but her very right to be in that room. She'd spent the morning retweeting posts calling Gonzalez a professional victim and questioning her organization's legitimacy. Ocasio-Cortez, meanwhile, had done her homework. Her staff had spent weeks preparing a comprehensive fact-check of every claim Greene had made about immigration in the past year. The folder in front of her contained receipts, statistics, and evidence that would soon turn the tables in spectacular fashion. But beneath the surface of this policy debate, a more personal confrontation was about to erupt, one that would strip away the veneer of congressional courtesy and expose the raw battle for America's soul. Greene's fingers drummed against the desk as she waited for her turn to speak, her body language telegraphing the storm about to break. When the chair finally recognized her, she leaned forward with predatory intensity, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. "Ms. Gonzalez," Greene began, deliberately mispronouncing the name with exaggerated emphasis. "You sit here asking American taxpayers to fund your organization, but I have some questions about who you really represent." The disrespect in her tone was unmistakable, causing several committee members to shift uncomfortably in their seats. Representative Jamie Raskin's eyebrows shot up. Representative Ro Khanna shook his head slowly. But it was Ocasio-Cortez's reaction that cameras would later replay endlessly. A slight tightening of her jaw, her pen pausing mid-note, her eyes narrowing as she recognized the familiar playbook about to unfold. "Your organization claims to help asylum seekers," Greene continued, making air quotes with her fingers. "But our research shows that less than 15% of these cases are approved. That means 85% are fraudulent. Why should Americans pay for fraud?" The statistic was misleading at best, malicious at worst. Gonzalez opened her mouth to respond, but Greene steamrolled forward, her voice rising with each word. "Furthermore, I have documents here showing your organization spent $2 million on cultural programs last year. Teaching people how to be American? They should already know that if they want to come here." She waved, a paper dramatically, though those close enough to see noted it appeared to be a printout from a blog post, not an official document. The gallery stirred. Reporters typed furiously. In the back row, a young woman who'd benefited from Gonzalez's programs gripped her friend's hand, her face flushed with anger and hurt. Greene's assault continued, each claim more inflammatory than the last. "You yourself came here illegally. Oh, excuse me, seeking asylum," she sneered. "And now you make 6 figures telling other people how to game the system. How is that not a conflict of interest?" Representative Ayanna Pressley audibly gasped. The chair called for order, but Greene pressed on, her face reddening with fervor. "I have reports that your facilities are teaching people how to lie on their applications, how to claim persecution that doesn't exist. You're coaching them to say the magic words that keep them here, taking jobs from real Americans who were born here, whose families built this country. The claims were explosive, designed to go viral in right-wing media circles. But those familiar with immigration law recognize them as dangerous distortions. Asylum seekers are legal immigrants. The approval rate Greene cited ignored the complexity of immigration courts, where lack of legal representation often doomed legitimate cases. The cultural programs were English classes and civics education, the very things conservatives claimed immigrants should pursue. Gonzalez sat dignified but visibly shaken, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Behind her, her assistant's face had gone pale. They'd prepared for tough questions, but not for this level of character assassination. "And let's talk about crime," Greene continued, her voice now at near shouting volume. "Your organization housed 3 individuals who were later arrested, 3 criminals that you unleashed on American communities." She failed to mention that these arrests were for minor traffic violations, or that the rate was far lower than the general population. Facts didn't matter when the performance was everything. Committee members watched in growing alarm. Representative Jim Jordan nodded along approvingly, while Representative Katie Porter furiously scribbled notes, her expression thunderous. But it was Ocasio-Cortez who drew the most attention. She sat perfectly still, her composure almost unnatural, like a coiled spring waiting to release. "So I ask you again, Ms. Gonzalez," Greene concluded, practically spitting the name. "Why should American taxpayers fund an organization run by someone who shouldn't even be here, helping people who don't belong here, teaching them to lie their way into our country?" The room fell silent except for the scratch of reporters' pens and the soft whir of cameras. Gonzalez lifted her chin, preparing to respond with dignity to the assault on her life's work and very existence. But before she could speak, another voice cut through the silence, calm, measured, and loaded with barely contained fury. "I'd like to respond to my colleague's claims," Ocasio-Cortez said quietly, her words carrying the weight of an approaching storm. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman," Ocasio-Cortez began, her voice steady as steel. She opened her folder with deliberate precision, the sound of papers shuffling cutting through the tense silence. "I believe the committee and the American people deserve accurate information, so let's examine my colleague's claims one by one." Greene's smirk faltered slightly as Ocasio-Cortez pulled out her first document, holding it up for the cameras to see clearly. First, the 15% approval rate. My colleague is citing a blog post from Patriots Daily, not official government data. She placed an official Department of Justice report on the desk. The actual approval rate for asylum cases with legal representation is 63%. For those without lawyers, which Ms. Gonzalez's organization provides for free, it drops to 17%. The issue isn't fraud, it's access to due process. Reporters leaned forward. Representative Raskin nodded approvingly. Greene's face began to redden. Second, the $2 million in cultural programs. Ocasio-Cortez produced another document, this one bearing the official seal of the IRS. According to their publicly available 990 forms, which I have here, that money funded English as a second language classes for 8,000 people, citizenship test preparation for 3,200 legal residents, and job training programs that helped 2,500 refugees find employment within 6 months. She paused, letting the numbers sink in. These aren't handouts. These are investments in people who want to contribute to our economy. The same programs my colleague's own Irish great-grandparents might have benefited from at Ellis Island. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Greene shifted in her seat, her knuckles white as she gripped her microphone. Now, about Ms. Gonzalez's own story. Ocasio-Cortez's voice softened slightly, but her eyes remained locked on Greene. My colleague called her an illegal immigrant. Here's Ms. Gonzalez's asylum approval from 2008. She held up the document. Here's her green card from 2013. Her naturalization certificate from 2018. She followed every law, waited in every line, passed every test. She's not just a legal immigrant. She's an American citizen, who has likely paid more in taxes than some multinational corporations. The witness section erupted in soft applause before the chair's gavel restored order. Gonzalez wiped a tear from her eye, sitting a little straighter. "The 3 arrests my colleague mentioned?" Ocasio-Cortez continued, her momentum building. "I pulled the police reports. One was driving with an expired license. The DMV had sent the renewal to the wrong address. Another was a noise complaint at a birthday party. The third was jaywalking. Jaywalking." She emphasized each syllable. While the 50,000 people Ms. Gonzalez's organization has helped include 400 doctors, now serving in rural hospitals, 200 teachers in understaffed schools, and 45 veterans, yes, veterans, who served our country before they were even citizens. Committee members began pulling out their phones, fact-checking in real time. Everything Ocasio-Cortez said was verifiable, documented, real. The contrast with Greene's inflammatory blog citations couldn't be starker. "But let's address the most insidious claim," Ocasio-Cortez said, her voice dropping to a tone that commanded absolute attention. "The suggestion that Ms. Gonzalez teaches people to lie." She pulled out a thick manual. "This is their asylum preparation guide. Page 47 explicitly states, and I quote, 'You must never lie or exaggerate your claim. Fraud is a federal crime that will permanently bar you from immigration benefits.' They don't teach people to lie. They teach them their rights under American law." She flipped through pages marked with sticky notes. Page 82. "Documentation is essential. Gather all evidence of persecution." Page 134. "If you don't remember exact dates, say so. Honesty is paramount." This isn't coaching fraud. It's ensuring due process, something the Constitution guarantees to all persons, not just citizens. The room had transformed. What began as Greene's theatrical assault had become a masterclass in preparation and facts. Young staffers typed furiously on their phones, sharing clips in real time. The hashtag #AOC FactCheck began trending before the exchange even concluded. "My colleague asked why taxpayers should fund this organization," Ocasio-Cortez said, building to her conclusion. "I have a better question. Why wouldn't we fund programs that turn refugees into teachers, asylum seekers into doctors, and vulnerable families into thriving, tax-paying members of our communities? The real fraud here is pretending that helping people achieve the American dream somehow diminishes it." She closed her folder with quiet finality. "I yield my time, and I thank Ms. Gonzalez for her service to our nation, because that's what it is. Service." The silence that followed was deafening. Greene's mouth opened and closed, but no words came. She shuffled her blog printouts, suddenly looking very small behind her microphone. The meticulous dismantling of her claims had been surgical, leaving no room for rebuttal. But Greene's humiliation was about to transform into something far more explosive. Greene's face had turned from red to purple, her hands trembling as she gripped the edges of her desk. For a moment, she sat frozen, the weight of her public dismantling crushing down on her. Then, like a dam bursting, she exploded. "How dare you!" she screamed, slamming her palm on the desk with such force that water glasses jumped. "How dare you sit there with your prepared talking points and defend criminals!" The chair's gavel banged frantically. "The gentlewoman from Georgia will maintain decorum." "I will not be silenced." Greene shot to her feet, her chair rolling backward. "This is exactly what's wrong with this committee, with this Congress. We have people who hate America defending those who want to destroy it." Ocasio-Cortez remained seated, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to Greene's meltdown. She simply placed her hands flat on the desk, watching as her colleague unraveled before the nation. "You want to talk about facts?" Greene's voice cracked, spittle flying as she gestured wildly. "The fact is, Americans are dying, killed by people who shouldn't be here. And you," she pointed a shaking finger at Ocasio-Cortez, You sit there with your smug face and your little folders pretending you're better than everyone. Representative Greene, you are out of order. The chair's voice boomed, but Greene was beyond hearing. She probably prepared this with her communist friends. This is all theater. Greene grabbed her stack of blog printouts, waving them like a flag. These are real Americans writing about their real experiences, not some government propaganda. Representative Raskin stood up. Mr. Chairman, I move that the gentlewoman's remarks be taken down. Oh, shut up, Raskin. Greene whirled on him. You're all in on it. This whole committee is a sham. You bring in these witnesses to push your open borders agenda, while real Americans suffer. Security officers moved closer to the dais. The gallery sat in stunned silence, phones recording every second of the breakdown. C-SPAN's cameras captured it all. The tears of rage streaming down Greene's face, the wild gesticulations, the complete abandonment of congressional protocol. Ms. Gonzalez is an American citizen, Ocasio-Cortez said quietly, her voice somehow carrying over the chaos. Documented, verified, legal. Stop talking! Greene screamed, her voice breaking completely. You don't get to lecture me. My family built this country. We've been here for generations. Not like... She stopped, perhaps realizing even in her rage that finishing that sentence would cross a line even she couldn't come back from. But the damage was done. Everyone knew what she'd almost said. The chair stood now, his gavel abandoned. Representative Greene, I am ordering you to stand down immediately, or I will have you removed from this hearing. Remove me? She laughed hysterically. That's what you want, isn't it? Remove anyone who tells the truth. Well, I won't go quietly. The American people see what's happening here. She grabbed her microphone, yanking it closer. This is what they do, folks. They bring their prepared lies, their fake documents, and when you challenge them, they try to silence you. But I won't be... The microphone cut off. The chair had signaled for her audio to be terminated. For a moment, Greene continued screaming soundlessly, her mouth moving but no words reaching the record. The visual was devastating. An elected official reduced to a muted, gesticulating figure, her authority evaporating in real time. Sergeant at arms, the chair said firmly. As security approached, Greene finally seemed to realize the gravity of her situation. She grabbed her papers, shoving them haphazardly into her bag. This isn't over, she said, her voice hoarse but now audible again as she stepped away from the dead microphone. America will remember who stood for them and who stood for the invaders. She stormed toward the exit, but stopped at the door, turning back for one last moment. Her eyes locked with Ocasio-Cortez's, and in them was something beyond anger. It was the recognition of complete defeat. You think you've won, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, but carrying in the silent room. But I know who you really are. Ocasio-Cortez's response would become the most replayed moment in congressional history. As the door slammed behind Greene, the hear-it-ing room remained frozen in stunned silence. Committee members, staff, reporters, and gallery observers all seemed to collectively hold their breath, processing the unprecedented meltdown they'd just witnessed. The chair cleared his throat, preparing to restore order, when Ocasio-Cortez slowly raised her hand. Mr. Chairman, she said, her voice carrying a quiet gravity that immediately commanded attention. I'd like to address what just happened, if I may. The chair nodded, perhaps sensing that this moment required something more than parliamentary procedure. Ocasio-Cortez stood, smoothing her blazer, and turned not to the committee, but to Maria Gonzalez, who sat trembling in the witness chair. Ms. Gonzalez, she began, her voice gentle but clear. I want to apologize that you had to experience that. You came here to share your expertise, to help our nation craft better policy, and instead you were subjected to attacks on your very existence. She paused, then turned to face the gallery, the cameras, and by extension, the millions who would soon watch her words. My colleague asked, "Who are you really?" Ocasio-Cortez continued, her voice gaining strength. So, let me answer that question, not just for Ms. Gonzalez, but for every immigrant, every refugee, every asylum seeker watching today. She walked slowly along the dais, her presence filling the room. You are the nurse who held my grandmother's hand in her final hours. You are the teacher who stayed late to help my cousin learn English. You are the small business owner who gave my neighbor her first job. You are the soldier who died defending a country that wasn't even yours yet. The gallery began to stir. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Phones appeared, recording what everyone sensed was becoming a historic moment. "You are not invaders or frauds or criminals," she continued, her voice rising with controlled passion. "You are exactly who we have always been. A nation of people brave enough to leave everything behind for the promise of something better. The only difference between my colleagues' ancestors and Ms. Gonzalez is the color of the boat they came on." A sharp intake of breath echoed through the room. She'd said it. The thing everyone knew but rarely articulated so plainly in these halls. My colleague's great-grandmother fled poverty in Ireland. Nobody asked her for papers. Nobody made her wait in cages. Nobody questioned whether she was American enough. She walked off a boat and into opportunity. Ms. Gonzalez fled violence in Honduras. She waited 5 years for a hearing. She learned our language, our laws, our history. She earned her citizenship through a process more rigorous than any of us in this room have ever faced. So I ask you, who is more American? The one who inherited it, or the one who chose it? Tears streamed down faces in the gallery. Gonzalez openly wept. Even hardened reporters seemed moved. But Ocasio-Cortez wasn't finished. What we witnessed today wasn't just a tantrum. It was fear. Fear that America is changing. Fear that people who don't look like you might also call this home. But here's what that fear doesn't understand. America isn't weakened by our diversity. We are literally built on it. E pluribus unum. Out of many, one. Not out of some or out of the right kind. Out of many. She returned to her seat, but remained standing, her final words deliberate and measured. So, to anyone watching who has ever been told you don't belong here, who has ever been made to feel less American because of where you were born, or how you speak, or what you look like, I want you to hear this. You belong. You matter. You are not just welcome in America. You are America. And no amount of screaming, no amount of hate, no amount of fear will ever change that fundamental truth. She sat down in complete silence. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Then from the back of the gallery, someone began to clap. Slowly, hesitantly at first, then joined by another, then another. The chair didn't gavel for order. He couldn't. The moment had transcended protocol. Within minutes, the clip hit social media with the force of a cultural earthquake. "You are America" became an instant rallying cry. The first tweet, from a reporter in the room, simply said, "I've covered Congress for 20 years. I've never seen anything like what AOC just did." It garnered 100,000 retweets in an hour. Celebrities began weighing in immediately. Lin-Manuel Miranda tweeted, "This is why representation matters. At AOC just spoke for millions of us." Oprah Winfrey shared the clip with just 3 words: truth, power, America. LeBron James posted it on Instagram with a crown emoji. Even typically apolitical figures felt compelled to respond. Taylor Swift shared it with, "This is what leadership looks like." The hashtag #YouAreAmerica exploded across platforms, with immigrants and children of immigrants sharing their stories. A Vietnamese doctor in Texas posted a photo of herself in scrubs. Refugee boat baby, now saving lives in the ER, #YouAreAmerica. A Mexican-American teacher in California shared, "First in my family born here, teaching the next generation, #YouAreAmerica." The stories poured in by the thousands, each one a testament to the truth Ocasio-Cortez had articulated. News networks scrambled to analyze why this moment resonated so deeply. Political scientists pointed to the perfect storm of factors: the stark contrast between Greene's ugly nativism and AOC's inclusive vision, the personal nature of the appeal, the historical callback to America's immigrant roots, and most importantly, the dignity with which she'd responded to hatred. But perhaps the most telling response came from Maria Gonzalez herself. As the hearing resumed, she spoke through tears. "In 15 years in this country, I've never felt more American than I do right now." That clip, too, went viral, perfectly encapsulating why Ocasio-Cortez's words had struck such a chord. By sunset, "You Are America" appeared on protest signs, T-shirts were being designed, and organizers were planning rallies. A moment of ugly confrontation had been transformed into a movement of affirmation. The internet hadn't just been broken, it had been rebuilt around a message of hope. The response revealed a hunger in America for leaders who could articulate unity rather than division, who could meet hate with humanity, who could remind a fractured nation of its highest ideals. In just 3 minutes, Ocasio-Cortez had provided what years of political rhetoric had failed to deliver: a vision of America that included everyone. But the ripple effects were just beginning. Within minutes of Greene's dramatic exit, the internet exploded. The first clip hit Twitter at 11:43 a.m., a 20-second video of Greene screaming, "I will not be silenced," while the chair desperately banged his gavel. By noon, it had 3 million views. By 2 p.m., it had spawned 1,000 memes. The hashtag #GreenScreenMeltdown began trending worldwide, accompanied by increasingly creative remixes. Someone set her tantrum to death metal music. Another overlaid it with subtitles translating her screams into different language, each more absurd than the last. TikTokers began reenacting the scene, with pets playing different committee members. A particularly viral version featured a cat knocking papers off a desk, while someone off-camera yelled Greene's words. But it was Ocasio-Cortez's methodical fact-checking that became the real phenomenon. Twitter users created thread after thread, breaking down each claim and correction with screenshots of the documents she'd presented. #AOC FactCheck reached #1 globally, with over 8 million tweets in the first 6 hours. Young activists shared clips with captions like, "This is how you come prepared," and "When you do the homework versus when you copy from Facebook." CNN's breaking news alert simply read, "Congressional hearing erupts as Reporter Greene melts down after fact-check." Fox News initially tried to frame it as, "AOC ambushes colleague with prepared attack," but even their comment section pushed back, with viewers noting that presenting facts wasn't an ambush, it was accountability. The Washington Post's fact-checker published a real-time analysis, rating each of Greene's claims. The visual was damning: a column of red 4 Pinocchio ratings next to Greene's statements, contrasted with green checkmarks validating Ocasio-Cortez's corrections. The article received 400,000 shares in its first hour, crashing the Post's servers temporarily. News networks scrambled to analyze why this moment resonated so deeply. Political scientists pointed to the perfect storm of factors: the stark contrast between Greene's ugly nativism and AOC's inclusive vision, the personal nature of the appeal, the historical callback to America's immigrant roots, and most importantly, the dignity with which she'd responded to hatred. But perhaps the most telling late-night comedians had a field day. Trevor Noah's team produced a segment within hours, intercutting Greene's meltdown with toddler tantrums. "This is what happens when Facebook University meets Harvard Law," he quipped. Stephen Colbert performed a dramatic reading of Greene's rant, complete with paper throwing. SNL announced they were scrapping their planned cold open to recreate the hearing. The generational divide in reactions was stark. On Facebook, older conservative users rallied to Greene's defense, sharing edited clips that removed context and focused only on her passion for America. But on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, Gen Z and millennials overwhelmingly celebrated Ocasio-Cortez's composed demolition of misinformation. The phrase, "She came with receipts," appeared in millions of posts. Professional fact-checkers worked overtime. Snopes published a comprehensive breakdown of the exchange, verifying every document Ocasio-Cortez had cited. PolitiFact created a special page tracking Greene's claims about immigration, showing a pattern of false statements stretching back years. Even international fact-checkers weighed in, with BBC Reality Check explaining the American asylum system to confused global audiences watching the viral clips. The memes evolved rapidly. Greene's "I will not be silenced" became the new, "Sir, this is a Wendy's," a response to any online tantrum. Her muted screaming spawned green screen mode, where people posted videos of themselves dramatically overreacting while muted. The image of Ocasio-Cortez calmly holding up documents, while chaos erupted, became a template for me presenting facts versus my family at Thanksgiving. Media metrics told the story in stark numbers. The original C-SPAN footage garnered 45 million views across platforms in 48 hours, unprecedented for a committee hearing. News segments featuring the exchange averaged 3.2 million viewers, triple normal daytime ratings. Ocasio-Cortez's Instagram post, a simple photo of her folder with the caption, "Preparation is everything," became her most liked post ever, surpassing 5 million hearts. But beyond the entertainment value, something profound was happening. Google searches for Asylum Process USA increased by 2,400%. Gonzalez's organization website crashed from traffic as people sought to donate or volunteer. Immigration lawyers reported surge in people asking how to help asylum seekers in their communities. The digital aftermath revealed a nation hungry for truth in an era of misinformation. Young people especially shared the clips not just as entertainment, but as education. Proof that facts still mattered, that preparation could triumph over propaganda, that dignity could withstand tantrum. By evening, Greene auto-completed to "Green Meltdown" on Google search. Her attempt to grandstand had backfired spectacularly, turning her into a cautionary tale about the dangers of bringing blog posts to a fact fight. The internet had rendered its verdict, and it was merciless. But the most devastating response was yet to come. The Greene-Ocasio-Cortez confrontation became more than a viral moment. It crystallized the battle for truth in American democracy. Political scientists would later mark it as a watershed, the moment when the collision between social media-fueled disinformation and fact-based governance reached its breaking point in full public view. Dr. Sarah Chen, a Harvard professor studying political communication, called it the most consequential 5 minutes of congressional footage in the digital age. The exchange laid bare the two competing visions of political discourse, one rooted in emotional manipulation and unfounded claims, the other in verifiable facts and documented evidence. That the fact-based approach emerged victorious offered hope, but also revealed troubling vulnerabilities in our democratic systems. The role of preparation became impossible to ignore. Ocasio-Cortez's folder of documents, which her staff later revealed took 3 weeks to compile, demonstrated that combating misinformation required more than good intentions. It demanded resources, time, and expertise that not every elected official possessed or prioritized. The asymmetry was stark. Spreading lies took seconds, while debunking them required weeks of meticulous work. Social media's dual nature emerged clearly in the aftermath. The same platforms that had allowed Greene's false claims to flourish for years also enabled their rapid debunking. Twitter became a real-time fact-checking engine, with users collaboratively verifying documents and sharing primary sources. Yet the echo chambers remained. Conservative Facebook groups continued sharing edited clips that portrayed Greene as a victim of ambush journalism, demonstrating how different Americans could watch the same event and see completely different realities. The generational divide in information processing proved particularly significant. Younger viewers, raised in an era of digital manipulation, immediately recognized and shared the documented evidence. They understood the difference between a screenshot of a blog post and an official government document. Older audiences, particularly those whose primary news source was Facebook, showed more susceptibility to the emotional appeal of Greene's nationalism over Ocasio-Cortez's facts. Media literacy emerged as perhaps the most critical lesson. The hearing became an inadvertent masterclass in evaluating sources. When Greene waved her printed blog posts while Ocasio-Cortez presented government documents, viewers received a visual representation of the hierarchy of credibility. Teachers across the country reported using the exchange to demonstrate the importance of primary sources, proper citations, and the danger of confirmation bias. The fact-checking infrastructure of democracy itself came under scrutiny. Major news outlets had fact-checkers working overtime, but the speed of social media meant false claims often spread faster than corrections. The hearing highlighted the need for more robust, real-time fact-checking mechanisms in political discourse. Some proposed that congressional hearings should include live fact-checking displays, similar to sports broadcasts showing statistics. For citizens seeking to navigate this landscape, the exchange offered a roadmap. First, demand sources. When politicians make claims, ask for documentation. Second, distinguish between primary sources and opinion. Government databases, academic studies, and official records carry more weight than blog posts or social media rumors. Third, recognize emotional manipulation. When speakers resort to shouting and personal attacks rather than addressing facts, it often signals an absence of substantive argument. The psychological aspect proved equally important. Greene's meltdown demonstrated how deeply threatening facts could be to those whose worldview depended on false narratives. Her inability to respond to documented evidence with anything but rage revealed the emotional investment many Americans had in their chosen versions of reality. This suggested that combating misinformation required not just facts, but empathy for those whose identities had become intertwined with false beliefs. The hearing also exposed the inadequacy of traditional congressional decorum in addressing bad faith actors. The committee's rules assumed all participants would engage honestly, leaving few mechanisms to handle those who deliberately spread disinformation. This structural weakness allowed bad actors to hijack proceedings, using congressional platforms to amplify false claims. Yet the public response offered hope. The overwhelming support for fact-based discourse, particularly among younger Americans, suggested an appetite for truth over theater. The viral spread of Ocasio-Cortez's methodical fact-checking indicated that many Americans, exhausted by years of disinformation, craved leaders who came prepared with evidence rather than emotions. The implications extended beyond politics. In classrooms, boardrooms, and community meetings across America, the exchange became shorthand for the importance of preparation and facts. Bring receipts entered common parlance, a reminder that claims required evidence. The folder of documents became a symbol of democratic participation done right. As Dr. Chen concluded in her analysis, this wasn't just about immigration policy or congressional procedure. It was about whether American democracy could self-correct, whether truth could still triumph over lies in the digital age. The answer, tentatively, appears to be yes, but only when citizens demand it. The ripple effects of that Tuesday morning continue to reshape American political discourse. Within weeks, the House Ethics Committee proposed new rules requiring members to provide sources for statistical claims made during hearings. The Gonzales Protocol, as staffers informally called it, mandated that witnesses be treated with baseline dignity regardless of political disagreements. More significantly, the exchange sparked a nationwide movement for civic education. Libraries reported surge in attendance for Fact-Checking 101 workshops. High school teachers incorporated the hearing into civics lessons, using it to demonstrate both the power and responsibility of democratic participation. Young people, especially, embraced the message that preparation and truth could triumph over bombast and lies. The immigration debate itself shifted. Gonzales's organization saw donations increase by 400%, enabling expansion of their legal aid programs. More importantly, the human stories behind immigration statistics became harder to ignore. When politicians attempted to dehumanize immigrants, citizens increasingly demanded facts, not fear-mongering. But perhaps the most lasting impact was the template it provided for democratic engagement. Across America, citizens began attending local government meetings armed with research. Town halls saw residents arriving with folders of documentation. The phrase, "I brought receipts," became a rallying cry for accountability at every level of government. The lesson was clear. Democracy requires active participation, not passive consumption. It demands that citizens distinguish between facts and propaganda, that they hold leaders accountable with evidence, and that they reject the politics of fear in favor of informed debate. As we face continued challenges to truth in public discourse, remember this: every citizen has the power to be a fact-checker, a truth-teller, a defender of dignity. Democracy isn't a spectator sport. It requires all of us to show up prepared. Stay informed. Demand sources. Bring receipts. Because in the end, as that Tuesday morning proved, truth isn't just powerful, it's essential to our survival as a democratic nation. The future of American democracy depends on citizens who refuse to let lies go unchallenged. Will you be one of them?